Hi, everyone. This is Theresa. I'm a happy mama mentor for happy family. I'm a registered dietitian, lactation consultant, and I am a mom to a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, both girls, and then a little 7-month-old guy who's definitely catching up to his sisters. So I'm kind of in a good place to talk about starting salads, which is our topic for today. Um, my little guy just started solids within the past couple of months. You might have a baby who's on the cusp of starting solids, or you might want to know what to do after purees. And we get a lot of questions about this topic. It's something I've worked in for a really long time. I worked for WIC for a while, and then I had my own kids, and then now I work for Happy Families. So I've been working in this space for a while. So starting solids, I always try to tell parents that it's a really exciting, fun experience. It's most beneficial. Right now, you'll see a lot of the major organizations talk about that you should introduce solids around 6 months of age. You may still find pediatricians that recommend 4 months, but there are a few key signs of readiness that you want to abide by. So that would be if your baby can sit up with some assistance. So basically, if you're sitting your baby in a high chair, they're not slumping over like this. You want them to be able to at least sit up with their back supported. And then the same thing goes for their head. Your baby should have head control before you start introducing solids, because think about it, you give the spoon, and if baby can't keep their head up and they're going like this, probably not a good idea for them to be trying to eat and swallow and all of that. And then the next one I never see a problem with, that baby shows interest in foods. Usually they just want to do whatever the family is doing, so it's not really unusual for babies to start wanting foods at 3, 4 months. And I get a lot of parents asking that question. Oh my gosh, they want the food. What do I do? And they basically want to be doing whatever you're doing. So that's not really an unusual thing, but it's definitely kind of a sign that they're ready to move. But those structural components are the more telling ones. And then the last one is if baby can just take, so if you say you start solids, you give baby a spoonful. The last sign of readiness is that baby can actually take food from the spoon and move it to the back of their mouth. If they're not ready yet, they may push it out with their tongue, they may pocket it, and you can still continue to try every day, but it's and once they're ready, and then you can start, giving a couple meals a day and all of that. But that's kind of the last sign. Um, Also, at 6 months, your baby's intestines are mostly developed. Typically, though, the longer you wait, the better the outcome will be. And then risk of choking too, and we'll get to that. I saw we did have a question about that before we came on, so we will address that as well. And kind of the mantra for dietitians and people who work in this space is under one just for fun. Food is really about experience. So yes, there are some nutrients they need. We got to make sure baby gets some iron foods, which we'll talk about, and gets a good variety of tastes and things like that. That includes spices, not salt, but spices, and seasonings and herbs. And just the more flavor they get, the better. And it does decrease chances of picky eating. You're always going to have a picky eater, I'll just warn you now. But it'll decrease the chances that they're going to really just stick to one food forever and all that kind of thing. And also, too, breast milk or formula need to be the main source of nutrition until baby turns 1. Their bellies are still small, and they just can't possibly eat enough of a variety to get in the nutrition that they need, without the assistance of breast milk or formula. If you are using formula, make sure it's infant formula, not toddler formula. Toddler formula is formulated differently. It's for the needs of toddlers. So breast milk, obviously, yay, breast milk, formula. Okay. Um, so the traditional way of introducing solids is giving the purees first and then gradually stepping up in texture. So you can start with fruits, you can start with vegetables, you can start with cereals, you can start with pureed meats, you can start with homemade pureed beans, you can start with any of those things. Start with avocado. That's a great first baby food. You can even do yogurt. there's no one particular food that you have to start with. That was old thinking. I'm not even sure why that was ever the case, where you had to introduce cereal first and then fruits and then, but you can do whatever you want. Go through the baby aisle. When I was shopping for foods for my son for the first time, I just was like, oh, this looks good. This looks good. This looks good. And I just grabbed it all. But you typically are going to want to start with pureed. So in most baby foods, that's something like stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 1.5. Um, uh, Sometimes even up to stage 3, depending on the company. Every company kind of categorizes it a little differently. But feel free to give a variety. There's no one set food you have to give. More varieties, the better. You may see the recommendation that you want to introduce a new food every few days and watch your baby for a reaction. You can certainly do that. There's no harm in doing that. You don't have to do that. I'm fine when parents do that, but it's just, if you're going to see a reaction, you're going to see a reaction. And if your baby is high risk for food allergies, if there's a family history or baby has a history of severe eczema or an actual allergy, like if mom had to go on a restrictive diet or there's a special formula involved or something like that, then your doctor would talk to you about the best way to introduce allergens. Sometimes that is actually in office, but everything else is a lower risk for allergen just in general. It's not one of those top 8, egg and wheat and dairy and all of that. So you can certainly introduce one new food every few days, or you can kind of just go for it and see how it goes. And that also comes into, I get a lot of questions about, well, when can I start introducing mixed foods? Again, that's kind of old thinking that it has to be a single ingredient food. You can introduce mixed foods early on. If you think about it, our ancestors, other cultures who don't have these like nice little packaged single ingredient foods, they're introducing babies the foods they eat in a mashed up form. That's perfectly fine. And I do it all the time, and that kind of moves you into the baby led weaning that you may have heard about. That is basically, we skip purees altogether, and you are giving baby actual things to hold and manipulate. That's a whole other topic that we definitely don't have time for today. And I did see that someone asked for some recommendations for some resources to learn more about baby led weaning. So there is a dietitian, Katie Ferraro, Ferraro. She has a website with resources for baby led weaning. And there's also the book Born to Eat. So if you're looking for more information on baby led weaning, those would be some good resources to go to. And honestly, a lot of dietitians, what we do, our big secret is we just do a mix. I've given my kids purees, and then I'll also give them finger foods too, and kind of let them play around with it. That includes everything from teething crackers, lentil soup, because they can't, just pick up the lentils and they can put it in their mouth. It's really good manipulation, good finger and hand control. And you can do things like that, or rice or shredded cheese or puffs or whatever. And you can wait maybe till they're 7 or 8 months to start introducing that if you're kind of going the combination route. So back to purees. We never ever want to put baby food in a bottle. Never, never, never. It's a choking risk. It can override their senses of hunger and fullness. And it also can actually be less nutritious, because if you think about it, cereal does not have nearly as many nutrients as breast milk or formula. So if you're putting cereal in the bottle and they're getting full, they're not actually getting their full nutrition that they need from that formula or breast milk. So never ever put food in the bottle. It's always in a bowl. These muscles are important to develop, and you're going to develop them by letting them actually eat foods off a spoon or with their hands or whatever. But typically, the typical starting amount is 1 or 2 tablespoons, 1 to 2 times per day. And then that'll graduate upward closer to 1, where they're eating or around 9 months where it's 2 to 3 times a day, 2 to 4 tablespoons. And then as they get closer to a year, we're really looking at 3 meals a day, 2 to 3 snacks. They're still not going to eat a whole ton, but that's where we're really making sure they're having a balanced meal with a vegetable, a protein source, and things like that. Um, I get a lot of questions about feeding. When do we give their milk? When do we breastfeed them? When do we give them their bottle? Typically, you want to give them their milk first because, again, we've already established that milk is their main source of nutrition. So you can feed them breastfeed them or give them their bottle first, maybe a half hour before you give them their solids if you want to make sure they're a little bit hungrier. But definitely milk first because we really want to make sure they're still getting that nutrition from milk. These foods are not going to provide them that complete nutrition that their milk does. Um, and if you guys have any other questions about purees or baby led weaning or anything like that, feel free to type it in the box there. And I see we already got a question. I'm just checking here. What foods are the best to start baby on when they move towards solid foods? So, like I said, anything is fair game. Um, if you're breastfeeding, you do want to make sure you're getting iron in. Iron supplements aren't currently recommended necessarily. You'd want to talk to your baby's doctor about that, but usually you'd want to do something like high iron foods, so pureed meats, or if you get really finely shredded chicken that they can pick up, or mashed up pureed beans, lentils, things like that. Those are going to be your iron foods, and the cereals and the baby cereals, of course. So those are all fortified with iron. So that's kind of the one caveat, but really any food is fair game. I love to introduce as much as possible. And there was a question on resources on baby led weaning. I shared that. Katie Ferraro's website, and she's a dietitian. That's Ferraro, and the book Born to Eat are both great resources. And then I also mentioned there's a question here. I don't know if someone came on, like a good time to start solids. Closer to 6 months is better, but you want to make sure at least, definitely not before 4 months. You want to make sure baby can sit up with some support and they're not hanging their head down, that they're able to support their head. So we've started solids, baby's trying new things. How do we know when to advance? Well, if baby's doing really well with purees, and especially if you've given those soft finger foods like lentils or shredded cheese or anything like that, you can start making the purees a little more chunky, or you can provide soft, ripe fruits, like tiny, tiny bits of cut up blueberry or tiny, tiny bits of like really soft banana, although those get sticky. It's really hard for them to pick up. It's cute. You can do also steamed vegetables, like peas are a great one. I still love to recommend beans if you mash them up a little or squish a few between your fingers. And you can also do fish. Again, if your baby's low risk for allergies, you can talk to your doctor about introducing um, allergen foods like fish and seafood before a year, which is actually very much recommended. The earlier the better, and we'll talk about that. But you can do like little bits of salmon. But you can start introducing some of these more textured foods. My kid, he will just, like last night we took rice and we took a pouch and put it over the rice because what we were having wasn't really conducive to being cut up. And he just shoveled it in. We give him lentil soup, he shovels it in. My daughter was eating Indian food at 7 months because we lived right by an Indian restaurant. So, don't be afraid to introduce these things. The more flavor, the better. It's okay for babies to have flavor. Not too much salt, but flavor is totally fine. And it can be frustrating when you see your baby kind of playing with the food and, rather than wanting to eat it. Um, if they do that, that's okay. That's part of the experience process. Remember, under one just for fun. You want that experience, you want them to play around. It's a huge mess, and sometimes I dread it. Honestly, the more simple the high chair, the better. Um, if it's all plastic, I think you may know what all plastic brand of high chair I might be talking about. If it's all plastic and doesn't have a lot of crevices and a lot of cloth, my husband just goes outside and sprays it off. I mean, that's how you take care of that mess. If you have a dog, great, they'll clean the floor for you. I don't have one of those, but they'll clean the floor for you. It's messy, but that's how they learn. They're learning how to pick the things up. They're learning how to move it toward their mouth. They're experiencing the smells and the tastes and the textures and everything else, and they learn by it through all these senses. And so it's going to be messy. Take their clothes off, especially if they're wearing something nice. Just take the outfit off. So we can at least eliminate some of that. Um, and then you also want to establish kind of a positive feeding environment. And this really should extend through toddlerhood and even childhood. Never force, never make mealtime a fight. If they don't want it, they don't want it. It's okay. It can take baby 20 exposures or more to accept something. So it can really try your patience, but just continue to offer it. If they don't eat it, just offer a little bit. If they want more, great, give them more. But if they don't stress. Yes, sometimes babies do have sensory issues or gagging issues or things that are a little amiss. I want you to use your parent gut. And if you feel like something's wrong, push at least for an evaluation if that's possible, because once in a while those things do come up, like if a child really won't eat solids, or they throw up every time, or just something seems off. It's okay to investigate it further. That's okay. You're not crazy. These things do happen. Well, fortunately they're not common, but they do exist. And in terms of, I'm going to kind of scoot back to the allergy talk, because I want to make sure we don't have a lot of time left, and I want to make sure that we talk about this. So there was a lot of research coming out in the past 5-6 years about how introducing high allergen foods, so our big eight, like the main ones studied were actually nuts and peanuts and eggs. Introducing those as early as possible decreased risk for high risk babies, and they extrapolated that to low risk babies too. So again, if your baby is a high risk for allergies, strong family history, already has been diagnosed with an allergy, or an intolerance, has severe eczema, anything like that, you'd want to talk with your doctor about the best way to do this. You should talk to your doctor anyway about introducing these foods, just to kind of assess your risk if you're not sure. But all of those foods, the peanut butter, fish, egg, soy, dairy, those are better to introduce same time you're introducing all the other foods. As long as they're ready for the texture, you're not gonna, there's no way to really puree down scallops, so you're not gonna do scallops, or I don't know. That was a crazy example. I don't think I've fed my kids scallops yet, but they're really expensive. Anyway, so you want to make sure they're developmentally ready for the texture, but something like yogurt, that's basically a puree. If you do something like yogurt or whatever, you want to make sure that it's not a lot of sugar added. Your best bet really is to get plain yogurt and then add maybe some baby food fruit in there to kind of give it some of that flavor. You can even try the plain yogurt. It doesn't matter. And then I just want to make sure I'm hitting all our points here. And then in terms of cups, I'll just touch on that briefly. Um, Definitely around 6 months, introduce water in a sippy or straw cup. They really don't need any more than half a cup per day. You really don't want to overload them on water. They're not going to do much more than that themselves anyway. And then by the time they're a year, they can handle about 1 cup a day. It's just they get a lot of fluid from their breast milk and formula. They don't need more than that, and any more than that could possibly overload their kidneys. Definitely no juice, no juice. AAP recommends no juice under 1. It really is not nutritionally necessary in any way, shape, or form. They can get all that nutrition from fruits. It's just the concentration of sugar is so high. There's no fiber, there's nothing. So I really would stay away from juice, just their breast milk or formula and water. That's it. And give them that taste of water now would be great. So let's see. I want to make sure I hit all of our questions. Um, and if you guys want to continue typing in questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So one other question I got, is it okay giving the same foods over and over again for baby-led weaning? I'm running out of ideas. Yeah, that's totally fine. And also think, as baby gets older and can handle the textures or you're comfortable. Oh, and I will talk about choking and gagging. Let me make sure I do that. Um, give what you're eating. If you can somehow manipulate what you're eating to give baby, even if it's part of it. Like I said, we just gave our kid rice with some puree over it last night, and we had like a rice bowl with beans and vegetables and whatever. So feel free to do things like that. Give them what you are eating. It makes for a better mealtime experience. They feel included. It makes your job easier. If you're if you're having tacos, really get that meat tiny, 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 and some mashed up beans, shredded cheese. Boom, there you go. And then you can give some puree along with that if you want baby to have a vegetable. All of that is totally, totally fine. But make your life easy. Give your baby what you're eating, like all of our ancestors have. And then choking and gagging. I do want to touch on that really briefly. So, babies actually have a gag reflex pretty far forward on their tongue. I mean, it takes a lot for us to gag. Like, if the doctor's putting a tongue depressor in your mouth, they really have to stick it far back for you to start like that gagging feeling. On babies, that's really far forward. You might have noticed already if they're putting something in their mouth. That's to protect them from choking. So a lot of times when babies are gagging, they're not actually choking. They're gagging, and parents think they're choking. They're like, not making a noise, and it's kind of scary. I still get scared, but they're really gagging. Choking is when they're not breathing. They're making that classic kind of choking sound. God forbid turning blue, that kind of stuff. And that's when you do baby Heimlich, the finger sweep, and all of that. You can ask your doctor about the specifics on that, or look that up on the AAP website or anything like that. So gagging is not choking, and it is a protection against choking. So try not to get too nervous, because you don't want baby to have like a negative response if you're jumping up, but you're going to sometimes. It's going to happen. It's going to be scary. You're going to vow never to feed them again. I've done it, and my kids are, I think, somewhat normal. I guess you could call them normal. Let's see. So let me make sure I've got all our questions so far. There's no list of recommended foods to begin feeding baby first. Like I said, anything goes, other than you just want to make sure to get some iron in, especially if a breastfed baby. Um, and then I did mention the difference between gagging and choking. Gagging is simply just the kind of the muscular reflex to something being close to the throat. It's a protection against choking. Choking is actually something lodged in the airway. Let's see. I think I have another question coming in. No, but I think we are good. So it was really nice to virtually meet you all today. I hope this was helpful. So what's nice is Happy Family actually has a chat. That's my role. I'm called a Happy Mama Mentor. Me and my coworkers we are there to answer your questions. We're there 8 to 8 Eastern, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 weekends. Not typically major holidays, although during COVID we've been just working holidays because why not? And if you come in after hours, we get back to you the next morning, especially if you leave your email. But we're there to answer any of these questions. There's no strings attached. It's free. We do not mention products unless you have a specific question about a product. But we're just nutrition. We're just doing our job as dietitians and lactation consultants and stuff, and can help you out with any sort of feeding questions, from pregnancy through postpartum for moms, and then anything baby wise from 0 on up. So feel free to come by. You can just go to happyfamilybrands.com, and you see one of my coworkers' faces down in the right hand corner of the screen. Click on that and you can start chatting. It pops up all over the site. So if you're browsing the site and have a question you think of, just feel free to chat us. But it was really nice to meet you all. Good luck, congratulations, best wishes, and take care.